So my name's Sean O'Hara. I'm 27 years old. I'm a professional percussionist and a percussion tutor, and I'm mainly based in Preston. What I do in Preston is I teach a weekly djembe class in town, and I also teach one-to-one in Deepdale. So I teach drum kit, djembe, congas, bongos, cajon, and I teach some like beginner level piano as well. I studied here at UCLan in 2012 for 3 years and studied music and got a first in. And I play in a band called Mobius Loop, who have been going for about 11 years now, all from Preston. Over the last, in the first 5 years of the band, we must play Preston like 3 times a week, and like we've played hundreds of times, particularly like the Ferret and the Conti and O'Neill's. We sort of played quite a lot, and then the last few years we sort of spread out, and the lineup has changed. We've been aiming more at festivals and more down south, and so the last 3 years we've not particularly played Preston as much. Actually, we're playing our first gig in Preston tomorrow night for the first time in over a year, which at the Continental, which we're quite excited about. I think the festival circuit has really galvanised the band, because you do one festival and then you hear about loads of other different ones, and you meet new communities of organisers and bands, and so that's really opened a lot of doors for us. So one festival in particular called Audio Farm, which it was based in North Wales and now is in Cheshire. That was our first proper festival, and through that we got like 5 or 6 others, and we met other people that led to us getting different gigs in different parts of the country. And then when I left the band, they went as a 4-piece, and they really played a lot in the southwest, and also did a tour of Europe, which just opened a different community up for us. Another big part to do with it is budget. So being able to get our fee that we asked for is quite difficult to do in the northwest unless you're selling the tickets, and it's on you. I just think there is just more wealth in the south. In the south, I think, from my experience of working, the festivals just have more budget. The tickets are more higher price. So even the festival in Cornwall, it's only to 1,000 people, but all the tickets were like £200+, which you just wouldn't be able to do in the north. And the stalls cost like £400-500, so that brought a lot of money in. And so they were bringing bands over from Europe and paying us our highest fee, and so I think it's just a wealthier part of the country. But particularly the southwest is the most vibrant place for festivals at the small level. Yeah, there is. So what we did on our tour last year was, for quite a while now, because we've sort of made a bit of a name for ourselves, we hire the venue outright, and then we'll just ticket it. So for tomorrow night, we've rented the space, hired the sound tech, which we're paying for, and then we ticket the event, and whatever we make is on us. Continental have put a few posts out about it, but really it's up to us to promote the event. That's pretty much how we've been doing it outside the festivals. Really, it's very rare that you get a venue to go, yeah, we'll pay you your top fee and you just come and play and don't worry about selling tickets. You don't really get that. We've not had that for a while. I suppose something that might be beneficial to us is to support a bigger band, like a band that are doing like 1,000-seater rooms and stuff, and then obviously you're playing to their audience. We was like a friend of mine, Dave, who used to be in the band in the early days. He's in a younger band now, and they're in that process of wanting to go and do an open mic in Salford on a rainy Wednesday, just because there might be another gig in there, and they're loving that way of life, and they're all young, and they're all single and just motivated to do that. Whereas Dave remembers, he's sort of laughing because he remembers that we were like that when we were 19 and stuff. And we just loved it. It was just became what we loved to do. So we all lived together, and we were all that's all we did. And we just loved the sort of travellers way of and also we were quite acoustic. So I had a set of bongos, we had bass guitars and trombone and a banjo. So it was we could pack it in a car, so we could it was very mobile. And yeah, particularly in London, when we we sort of moved to London just to busk and do open mics, and we do 3 open mics in a night, and you get 2 songs each. You're straight back in the car and you do another one, and you'd be lucky if you got a pint for it, but all just so we can maybe get a gig at the end of it, like, so. Because you are paying to play, really, because you're paying for the fuel and you're paying for the instruments, and if you're not getting anything back, it's only some a matter of time until that becomes wearing, and you need to feel some sense of progression with it, at least to be covering your costs. We do a lot of free gigs now, but we sort of like, we need our cost covering, so that's sort of like, we did a charity gig the other night where they paid for our fuel and food and stuff, which we're happy to do, but we don't pay to play anymore. That's sort of a rule, because we did gigs at like the Academy in Manchester, because they're such a big name and it's good on your CV as a band. You're meant to sell out, you probably had this, you're meant to sell 50 tickets at £6 a ticket, and if you don't sell the tickets, you have to pay the rest of the tickets. So on that particular one, we just started as a band, we sold 41 tickets, and we were really proud of getting that amount of people there. And they went, well, you owe us 50 quid. And we're like, wow, we just sold you 41 tickets, you didn't even make a poster. Well, you're never playing for Academy again, and that was about 10 years ago. So, or for that promotion that worked for Academy. And we know a lot, but that's quite a cliche thing for a lot of young bands to get into those gigs. And yeah, they didn't even seem to, they weren't about, like, they didn't help promote the gig, it was just because they were Academy. So the dynamics changed over the years. So back then it was 5 boys and it was more of a democratic group, but my brother Alex has always been the band leader, really, maybe more unofficially back then, but he's always been the main songwriter, and he's the only member that's been in it the whole way through as well. In recent years, now we're a 3-piece now, so it's Alex, his wife Katie, and they sort of run the project, and then I come in and out as the percussionist. So some concerts I'll do just the 2 of them, and then for most of the gigs I'll also be there as well. But they run the band now as a couple, and to be honest, having a nice clear dynamic has actually really benefited the band. Having a clear leader and just a easier sense of communication has made it more productive. Whereas in past years, I'm not quite sure who's making the final call, or we all have a different idea of what we want to do, and it's hard to sort of delegate. And that's when the dynamics like that. Whereas now it's more streamlined, and obviously we're a lot more experienced, so we seem to be a lot more productive, even though we don't live together. University was a big part of that, going studying music at UCLan, because for each project you'd have a different leader, and they'd appoint someone who would run the project. And particularly for the 3rd year, when I had 9 musicians in my final pieces, and so to be able to craft it in a way that I wanted was a great opportunity. And because it was a final piece, people really listened, and that was a really nice opportunity to be able to try and direct people, and to get to not be condescending, but to not be not to be patronising, but then on the other side, don't be like a bully about it, or don't be over pushy about it. And because from my experience of being led by other directors, they need to have a creative expression. That I need to be able to, yes, if you want a certain type of beat, I get that, but I'm the person who's making this drum beat, so I'm making it's shaped how I see it. And so remembering that when you're directing others, I think, yeah, absolutely. We've had gigs over the years when where one of us or some of us have screamed at the audience because everyone's talking, and we wanted to do a ballad set over a Christmas get together. And so yeah, we've learned it, and particularly like in changes that we've had in life, when you feel empowered, like going vegan, for instance. In the first few months of going vegan, you feel like you need to shout at the world about it, as time goes on, you realise that no one's listening to you by doing that. So you refine it, and I think we've been doing it a while now. So I think we've definitely calmed it, and just let the songs speak. And the lyrics are great, and I'm really proud of the words in that band. Alex is a great lyricist. And yeah, we just allow that to be the focal point, really. Yeah, she's a punk rocker at heart, definitely. She's got great lyrics as well, I should say. Katie's writes some beautiful words. And her voice, she's brought that feminine energy has been a great benefit to the band, because it did used to be 5 lads, and she, like, the love between them two as songwriters is, you can really feel it, and everything they've been through. So people come on the journey with you. When I was 17, I quit college. I only did a year at Newman College, and then we went to live. We bought a caravan and we went to live in London in this caravan. We got sponsored by a biofuel company, so like, "Alright, brilliant, we got free fuel." So we just went down and did that. So I didn't end up doing my second year or getting my A levels. So when I was about 3 or 4 years later, Alex and Katie had already done the first year, and I helped them out in a piece, and I got chatting to a few of the lecturers. I sort of told that I would love to do the course, but I don't have the qualifications, and I was sort of doing a support working job that was quite stressful at the time, and I was just getting sick, tired of it, and they said, "Come and have a chat, because you've got a lot of music experience. We could be able to speak to the office people and be able to maybe get you on." And they did. They really, at first, Les Gillen, the head of music at the time, said he can't, no. And then he ran back a couple of days later and they got me on. So I didn't actually start till a week after everyone else. So it was a very last minute thing. And yeah, so I was very lucky, really, because usually I would have had to gone back and do a foundation year or something. Love that, really experimental course. Every week we're looking at different world music, and they were really encouraging stuff like build your own little instruments and just play your instrument in a way you've never have done before, and to adopt all different types of performance art that they were showing us. So I loved it. There was one thing, there was no drum tuition, so there was no like a top percussionist that I could have spent time with. So that was my one thing with it, really. But besides that, it was an amazing course. I was very lucky because we did it as we joined as a band. So two joined the first year, then 3 of us joined the year after, and so and then we had quite a few close friends who were all there at the same time, and we all lived together. So there was a lovely bubble there, I think. So I was quite privileged in that sense. In the 3rd year, we did do a business module, thinking about what it is you want to do, and I found some old notes recently. So I was writing about what I was going to do after uni. But no, to be honest, no, I think that's another aspect of the course that could be developed a bit. There wasn't as many like work experience opportunities when I've worked as a support worker for disabled students at the uni, and when I've done script writing course, they've got like script writers coming in, and then work experience to go work at ITV or something, and all these opportunities to go and do meet and greets and stuff and get your scripts handed into places. And I don't think that was when I was there particularly. Maybe it is now. That bridge wasn't there so much. And in terms of Preston, I mean, I wouldn't be able to do this djembe class without UCLan, because one of the members, he lends me most of the drums and provided the room for free. They've supported me a lot. I've done some really great piano work at like different conventions at UCLan that has been really great help at times. So they have helped me where they can. But in comparison to other courses and unis, I do think there could be more of a bridge in terms of just connecting you with the right people. So like festivals, for example, if you had someone who, at the end of the year, they go, right, here's a list of festivals that will love experimental music, or that would love your type of music. Here's the emails, just contact them. Or let's do a lecture on Arts Council funding. So like, I would love to have a chat with you after this about any advice you can give, because I haven't really had that in the past. So I'm about to fill an application in. So there were certain things like that maybe there could have been a bit more help with. So it has to come from us, really. I'm realising that now. Like those ideas need to come. You can't really wait around for it. And yeah, so it's definitely like my brother. They're setting up, and Katie are setting up a festival called Hem Redemption Festival, just near Hebden Bridge, I think, which is quite local. So they're setting their festival up next year. The jazz festival was great. Yeah, it was. I mean, who was headliners?
Courtney Pine was on this.
Courtney Pine. Was it Portico Quartet as well? Or someone them? I think they headlined as well. Like really established jazz bands. So yeah, Tony Riggy runs that. Did really well. Yeah, I think so. And the Continentals always seems to be getting a good stream of like professional acts coming through. I think the downstairs room at 53 is such a such a shame it's not being used, because I spoke to the sound tech there and he says it's a far better sound than in Guildhall.
And of course the Guildhall's not being used.
Yeah, so 2 rooms that are like 2,000 seaters each, maybe more, are not being used, and upstairs 50 degrees 500 seater. So yeah, so when we first started playing in Preston, Booney was called, who used to run the Ferret. He was a great energy, and he sort of booked all the bands and was really respected. And he was there for about 3 years while we just got going on, and still the Ferret has been a great hub, and it's it's responsible for keeping a lot of bands coming into the town, and just a professional place to play. It's hard to say really. No, a lot of bands have moved on, and a lot of promoters have kind of moved on onto Manchester, onto other places. Dan Morris did really well. He was the events manager for the Guildhall and Live, all them venues that the Guild attached to Guildhall, and he used to work for the Ferret. He's brought a lot of energy in. He's a different style of music to what we're in, so we've not really worked with him an awful lot, but he's brought a lot of big acts. When the Guildhall and Live were bringing in a lot of professional acts last year before it shut down, that was all to do with Dan. He got headhunted off Ferret, so he's and he makes all the posters, and he's just a really creative lad that I've known for a long time. So I think he put a first big event on in Manchester recently, so presumably he's working freelance now. I'm not quite sure, but he's definitely been a great energy the last few years. We are now in a time where the bands can do it. The bands, because with Facebook and all social media, it's so much easier now for us to, you don't have to pay for a newspaper ad, we are in a position where we can promote the event, and maybe the community of bands isn't quite where it was maybe 5-10 years ago, so it's hard because back then we were all promoting each other's events, and there was that sort of community hub where the people would just turn up to the venues expecting good music for a cheap ticket. A lot of those bands are disbanded, or then maybe they move to another city. There does seem to be a natural thing where people will move somewhere like Manchester or Liverpool or further on. That sort of happens. Some bands have just disbanded and gone into other art forms, or they're just, like I was saying before, like as you get older, you don't have the time really to. You have less time, I suppose, and more costs. So Moon and the Beams, they sort of came out after we did, and they brought loads of energy, youthful energy, and those young bands bring they bring the college kids and and that's what me being at college when we first started, that really benefited the band, and a lot of UCLan students came because of that. So yeah, I've seen a few events, but from what I've seen, there's still a good steady stream of out of town bands coming into the Ferret and Continental, and yeah, I suppose Guildhall isn't here now. Where else is doing it? Stanley Arms here is putting some good events on upstairs, like selling out, like really good poetry events and stand up. And what UCLan are doing with these workshops, like opening it up, has been maybe the best thing I've seen. So Ryan Dixon does his conga class. I'm doing the djembe, the samba, choir. There's a thing called the Jigsaw Workshop, which forget his name, but a really experienced practitioner in experimental music. He sets these really interesting lesson plans out where half the players only play for 2 minutes over here, and then you can only play dronal, like all these really interesting instructions to just create like soundscape sort of work. So there's now more access in the town to learning that sort of thing that wasn't there even 2 years ago. So John Aviar's got a big part to do with that. So in the first couple of years of us doing festivals, we were doing like 2 o'clock slots, 3 o'clock slots, where people hadn't even set the tent up, and or just you're on a stage where there's no microphones, or we did the first 2 or 3 years. It was that like we did Kendal Calling, we did 6 sets in the first year of Kendal Calling, and we were all on these tiny little stages. They were more like cafes on stage really, and it's only in the last 2 years of doing it that we started to get like 8 p.m, 9 p.m slots, and on like the good stages where they've actually got mics and stuff. So you do have to work at it, definitely. Well, weirdly, I've always loved it. Like I've always had even when we first started, setting the drums up, doing an open mic, putting them away, setting them up again, doing 3 open mics in a night, it's never been a problem. But something like a funding form to me is like, even writing my name out seems to take me a week. So it's just interesting. Some things I've got the ethic and some not so much. It's a good question. I do. I mean, I got into music through my brother. So being in and through all the friends that he's made. So when I came into it, he'd already started a band and he had a lot of musical friends. So I sort of walked into that, which was very lucky to do so. So that, and there was immediately a community. I was 16 straight out of school, and there was immediately this community of older, cool, young 20s people that were running open mics, and there was just no drummers around. So there was like a beautiful little position that I could just. So I just started by tapping bongos in the background, really, and I didn't perform with them for a few months. I was just literally learning how my right and left sort of. So I was very lucky in that sense, because I probably wouldn't naturally have gone towards music. I would have probably gone towards something else. But just a lovely opportunity seemed to arise, and so that community in Preston is what sort of pulled me into music, really, mainly from my brother. Definitely, and I've always benefited from that. So whenever I've put a few events on over the years, it's always been a lot easier, because just getting your friends out, if you can get most of your friends there, you can have a pretty good room. And if they bring a friend, and a lot of the time, even I'm finding this with the drumming classes, a lot of it is the social aspect of it. So we have a little 5-minute break. It's hard to get them back after the break, because they're all just having such a good chat. That a lot of it is just bringing people, because I've talking to friends of mine who don't really drink alcohol. We don't really gather unless it's to do with alcohol, really, now. You know, pubs are shutting down, and how do our communities gather just to be together? And these classes, I'm finding, are quite a big part of that, just for people to just come and see one another. It's definitely quite visiting other parts of the country that are much more prosperous, like financially and maybe culturally as well. There's definitely a humility in Preston, and even the events, like they're like £2 or £1 for a ticket, and even sometimes. So we're putting on our event tomorrow. It's £10 tickets. And we put a post out the other day for competition time for 2 free tickets, and everyone wrote on it, because everyone needs a free ticket. So it's like, we're gonna have to do £2 tickets. So there's definitely like a humble and close knit in some aspects as well community that I've seen over the years, particularly when Beautiful Planet was at its most vibrant. In the first cafe they had, it was a co-op run by Brett Lund, and that was a real melting pot in Preston, and it was in a really good location across from Rob Hall, and it was free to everyone, and you really got a sense of Preston being around that time, and it was all volunteer run, and everyone felt a part of it, and it basically outgrew itself. It became so popular we couldn't fit everyone in, and I think I really got a sense of that. A lot of the songwriting and stuff was quite local, and there was a real voice coming out of Preston at that time, I think. Very proud of a lot of the community for how they have sort of tackled the fracking site on Preston New Road. It's more the older community, really. I do think in the year like that fracking, it started as the community started to disband a little bit when Beautiful, because I feel like there's a hole was left when Beautiful Planet shut, which it did about 2 or 3 years ago. 2 years ago, I think. There's still a hole there, and I still see when I walk through town, I still see a smattering of that community sat in Cafe Nero and other cafes. I'm not really quite sure why they're there, you know, just somewhere to go. I do think it's missing that place where you can just go and be and feel really comfortable. And I think people, because we're busy and stuff, sometimes to text and meet up and stuff is a whole thing, whereas knowing that you're going to go to a place and see someone that you know, Beautiful Planet really provided that sort of community centre, really.
And it's the specialness of independence as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it wasn't a big corporation. It was the money was going back into it. It was run by, well, we all worked there pretty much, and it provided a real it was safe haven to a lot of quite vulnerable people as well. And it's just a shame we didn't have a bigger space, and that's, you know, to then put on much bigger events and to have separate spaces for different, because people were teaching guitar lessons, Tom Metcalf teaching guitar lessons, there was yoga. Everyone obviously was starting to have different ideas about what they'd like to do with it. So it's a shame we didn't have a more big, you know, one of the bigger spaces, which maybe in the future that might happen. I think it needs someone younger who's got the energy and the time to put in to galvanise that. I think it's only going to grow, and a big part of that, you know, YouTube and social media and the access we have to information, and there's some really great spokespeople now emerging for veganism and for moving away from fossil fuels and just how we've been living. Amazing documentary called Game Changers that's just come out regarding living a plant-based life, and athletes solely focusing on the professional athletes that have adopted it. And yesterday, where I was in St Anne's in a Labour club, I was chatting to like 5 different people about that documentary who'd just seen it. 2 of them specifically had gone plant-based because of it. So just that conversation is just popping up even more, even in this part of the country, which is quite traditional in a lot of ways, like butter pies and fish and chips and all is sort of the main thing. So Matty Brown, he's sort of pushing that, isn't he? I did go to a thing about a year ago where someone from Spain who came from that Spanish community, that they're sort of somewhat inspired on their model.
Mondrian, I think.
Yeah. So it's creating their own bank, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I think it's great. I'm glad. You know, I've known Matty for a long time, and he's quite a quiet chap who I've not spoken to an awful lot. So it's nice to see that he's getting in a position now of influence, because he spent a lot of time researching it and working hard. And yeah, I'm all for it. I'm all for more independent, you know, not being governed by London and by a bunch of politicians that don't even know where Preston is. Absolutely. I think more funding for the arts, more funding for, you know, it's terrible to see these empty cafes and empty buildings in Preston when they could be used for something, and seeing homeless on the street when we have empty buildings. It's just, and there's a lot of intelligent people in this town that could use it. I do think part of it is there's a lot of travellers in this town, and a lot of people that want to go see the world, and a lot of young people like myself and my partner, who between us were both really experienced cooks in vegan food. We know that if we wanted to set a cafe up, we know what we would put on that menu, and we could do it, but we know we'd be signing ourselves up to at least 3 years here of working every single day. Whereas we want to spread our wings and see more of the world. And I think a lot of people are like that as well. I felt like that of it because I'm a drummer. Like, you sort of depend on, it's a communal instrument, so I've never really had a solo show that I've done. So I've always sort of relied on other bands, and since I really devoted time to being in Mobius Loop, I had a 2-year gap where I wasn't in Mobius Loop, and I was in as many bands as possible just to try it out, and that was great. But I was in bands I wasn't particularly into just to stay busy. And then, which was good, and I was playing in town a lot, and I suppose that was my contribution to the arts in that time. But since then, I sort of refined it and tried to value my time a bit more. And since coming back into town, because I've been away a lot, I've done little bits of projects, but I'm only really in Mobius Loop as a project. And so I've realised that then I'm not really connecting with the scene that much, because I'm not in any other bands and because I'm not a solo performer. And Mobius Loop don't play in Preston so much. So this djembe class that I've done this last 2 months I felt like that has been my way of connecting with the town a little bit. And one-to-one lessons are quite expensive for most people, so I feel like, and I want to be able to, you know, like this class is like £5 each, so, and we bring the drums, so you just show up, and so it's more accessible. And I just want to I feel like that's one of my avenues into connecting with the town, really, as well as being a performer. And I would like maybe in the future start putting events on, but I feel as a drummer, I feel that comes better from someone who can just perform on their own. So I've not really had the confidence to put my own sort of show on, but this class has been a nice way of connecting with that. And then my one-to-one lessons I've sort of been working with different age groups over the last 10 years. That's been a nice way of sharing it, because there really isn't any percussion. There's drum kit teachers, but there's no world percussion teachers. Whereas you go somewhere like Manchester and Liverpool and onwards, there's obviously loads. I mean, that's kind of why I ended at beginners, so I wanted it for people who have not really drummed before. To be honest, it's more everyone that's been coming to my class has mainly been over 40, 50, so it's the older generation, really. They're more inspired, and time is more precious, maybe, I don't know, like they're just more inspired to come down. So even my friendship groups, that a lot of them know about drumming, and they're busy, and £5 is even still, you know, they spend five to come and drum when they feel like they could just ask me to come out for a drum and a cup of tea. So it's mainly been an older crowd that's come down, and some like one lady who's like 90 years old who's been coming. It was actually used to be the lead dancer in the Royal Variety Show, and she brought these shots in of her from the 1950s, looking at Audrey Hepburn, and she performed the same year as the Beatles. And she had this whole life story, and she's coming. She's learned all the patterns. About 4 or 5 from there are quite good players, but they're all, like a martial arts. It's good to work over the simple stuff and nail that and nail your techniques. And then I also allow a bit of freedom for them to, once we've got a beat, if they want to then add some extra parts on that, they're welcome to. And I might show them some slightly more advanced playing to keep them interested, whilst also staying at the pace of the beginners. So yeah, I think it's been I find with social media and stuff, I did feel like you get in that echo chamber, don't you? So it is full of, like, when I thought Labour were going to win it, because I was like, oh my God, everyone's just going to vote Labour. And it was, so you do some, then, so I'm sort of conscious and not writing, just, I feel like I am sometimes preaching to converted. And I think Mobius Loop, you know, we play vegan festivals and you sing your vegan songs, which is good because it galvanises community and it provides a soundtrack to how people are thinking. But recently on Sunday we played at a middle class charity event that you could tell was full of farmers and quite conservative group, and so it was really good. So a lot of our songs, where they might get a laugh, it didn't get a laugh. It got people looking at each other, and that was good and made them feel a bit uneasy and stuff. So that's the place to be, you know. And yeah, the most vibrant I've ever seen that is in the first couple of years of the band. We had an open mic at the Ferret, and they give it a different person each week, but we had it every week for a good 6 months, and that brought some continuity to it. And there was a real just a great bit of timing. Like Ray Morris, she just started out, and Karima Francis, Dave Sher, Baxter Rhodes. There's this really lovely Jamie Brewer community of solo artists that just started, and they knew they were coming on a Wednesday. They'd only get 3 or 4 songs, but it was going to be to a busy room. And so it's a really great melting pot for a good while. And every week it was just packed, like Saturday night. And that brought loads of community, and that really benefited us as a band, because people were then we were getting gigs through it, and everyone was getting gigs and making cool videos. And someone like Karima, she was in it, really helped her. People were writing songs on stage and stuff, and that was the most vibrant I've seen the Preston creative scene at that time. And a lot of people benefited from it because of that, which is good. So, but yeah, the continuity of every Wednesday at the Ferry, you knew it was going to be on, really helped us, and that was a good time. Well, the Ferret's always been an indie rock venue, so when we first came up, there was a lot of Arctic Monkeys fans around that style of music, and the Ferret's always championed that style of music. I've not really and so there was these really polished bands that were really doing well, and they were getting into different areas of the music scene that we weren't getting into because of that style of music. I don't really see as many of those bands around, but then again, like I say, I've not really been going out as much to those places. And then somewhere like the Continental, which only books like bands to headline an event, they want. You don't really see many Preston bands doing it.
They sometimes have a support role.
Yeah, so they'll have support acts, but you don't use, which is a bit, that kind of, I think, says something that there's not, because Conti's about, the room's at 160, 170, which is a big room for Preston, but I think as a local band should feel confident in being able to at least half fill it, and not many Preston bands take that on, which I think says something.
So I think it's partly a confidence thing then.
Yeah, I do, and also just some bands that are the bands there now that are gigging that regularly, that have that audience. The last band that I seen do that was Moon and the Beams, Dave Sher's band. They were when particularly a year ago, they were like filling the Ferret, and a lot of people knew them songs, and they had a really good community around them. But then they're all busy guys as well, and as you get older, I know the bass players are playing with a really big band now, and Dave's doing other stuff. So, but they're changing lineups and stuff. But they were a band that sort of really galvanised a lot of excitement around them. That was kind of like indie rock, folk rock sort of style. There was a great reggae band called Jamaica, I'm not sure what they're doing. They were sort of like Preston's reggae band. Operation Sound System. We've got a fracking song that's proper roots reggae now. That's like my favourite song. And then a lot of ska is influenced, like Balkan, fast, we do a lot of that sort of stuff. All sort of structured around Alex's raps, yeah. And particularly this new batch of music that's coming through. Again, it's very hip hop orientated, quite fast, dancey. And then Katie, you know, is a brilliant opposite to that. She likes, we have a lot of gentle folk music, and we might strip back to just guitar. So yeah, we've always been a fusion of different sounds. I tell you, the drum and bass nights pull a big crowd, and that's where a lot of the youth goes. So Spin City, so that's where that brings the kids out, and they can really pack a venue out. Then guys. And I think that drum and bass is the sound of the late teenagers now. So I think we were a bit cross-pollinating by working in the Ferret, really, because I was on congas. We were mainly quite an acoustic band. We did have quite a lot of indie vibe about us, but we sort of were playing in a lot of indie venues, really, because they were the ones with the best PA systems and most established venues that we could get hold of. Yeah, and you'll see a lot of acoustic acts playing those sort of places. So when I felt like Preston was at its most vibrant whilst I was a part of it, it was when a lot of those acoustic singers came through, and they were playing in all the different sort of venues. And yeah, but in Preston, the Ferret, I suppose, quite indie. Continental is quite world music, and UCLan's put a stamp on that as well by putting a lot of experimental nights on. And UClan now, with it being an experimental course, it is now spreading its wings and getting more into the venues, which I think is good, and opening up a lot more. And they have a thing called Winter Sound that you just put on, which is a winter festival, and then they obviously have Future Sound and the jazz festivals run by UClan. So I think that's cross-pollinating it, having jazz going to different venues and more experimental, and they have like Django Reinhardt days, don't they, and stuff, which is, I think, definitely opening it up. And the Stanley Arms having having stand up and spoken word. That we say his name's Gary, is it?
Gary, yeah.
I think he's bringing a lot of stuff in. Like people are getting ready for Edinburgh Fringe. Like really good polished acts coming to Preston to warm up. I think that's benefiting. I think getting Preston when it was doing, even going back to like the 60s and stuff, because of where it is. If you can get a lot of those touring artists coming through, being close to Manchester and Liverpool, then it really benefits. And this Gary seems to be getting a lot of those Edinburgh acts that are going north, stopping off in Preston and working there. I think that Preston can then really develop. But yeah, like Gary's an example of a vibrant promoter who knows who will work in Preston and bringing them in, and then selling tickets as well. Obviously, it's so yeah. I suppose again, coming back to your previous point, passionate promoters do really galvanise the event. It's an art form in itself to be a promoter. I was watching that Netflix documentary recently, the Dr. Dre one, and Jimmy Iovine, who was the brain behind a lot of the business side of things, and he said he spent a whole year just with sat in his flat with it on the telephone, and so all those artists didn't have to work. He was the one that devoted himself to that aspect of it, and someone like that is like so valuable, I think. And we maybe have, when we've seen other bands who've come up at the same time as us in other cities, they've always had someone like that who's worked with them, and I think there has been a lack of that in Preston, particularly maybe in the last 10 years when it's harder for managers and promoters to make money. You don't really see as many of them in Preston as you would in Manchester, and new bands who we'd never heard of, they've got like a team around them already because they've come out of Liverpool or somewhere like that, and obviously then their reach is far greater. So yeah, we've learned it through necessity. Alex particularly, he's the guy who's emailing and doing that. He's managing the band, and he's learned how to do it over the years. I did spend some time writing some music when I was like 18, 19, but I don't know what happened. I felt like I wasn't really inspired by it, and I didn't really I saw it did seem to fizz out a little bit. And always being around so many great songwriters, and then particularly last 5 years, just really embedding myself into the art. Do you know what I mean? And the more you learn, the more you realise there is to learn, and just getting lost in that really, and practicing every day. And I do look, and I feel quite young, and I'm sure those things can come back around. And one of my favourite songwriters, he only started writing at 36.
Who's that?
George Spittle. He plays in a band called Spiral Scouts, local band from Blackpool, St Anne's. So, but, you know, you can't force it. I do
Hmm.
write, but I find it difficult to stay on track. You know, you start writing and then the content seems to... It's hard to write in a narrative, I find. But I do feel like I express myself and put my soul into drumming, even though it's non-literal. I love my part in it because it like the impact of drumming on the music is like it's, as you know, it has a massive impact, and I love being my role in it. And I've seen video footage recently of being 2 years old hitting cushions to Little Mermaid, you know, some home video footage of me doing that. So it's always been quite a big part, natural instinct that I've had to do that. So I'm quite content, really. Yeah, it's in recent years it's definitely been more rooted in acoustic, I'd say, and then they might bring a percussionist in or a bass player, so then that in a sense gives you more. If it's just electric guitars, bass, and drums, then you kind of know where. I don't know, like because it's more in acoustic, then you can have more variety of instruments. It's hard to maybe bring a cello in when you got two electric guitars and drums and bass, whereas acoustic it's easier to bring in different types of instruments, a harp if you wanted, or sitar or anything. So yeah, I do think that. Not really seen many of the Asian community really play in the venues, which I would like to see, because I took part in some tabla workshops at the temple in near the Avon Park, and they were all amazing
Hmm.
there. And presume, you know, I'm sure there's a lot more musicians. It would be nice to see them, for us to connect a bit more as a community.
And particularly as a drummer, there's a massive tradition in drumming in Bangor and
Yeah,
Africa.
tabla is more. Is the tabla, the traditional Indian drum, is more complex than jazz drumming. Like the way they count and stuff. I spent some time in India a couple of years ago, and I went to learn tabla. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to live here about 20 years if I want to, like, if I want this to, if I really want to do this. So because it's so complex, and these huge 46, what is it, 43 beats pieces where you have to count every beat, and it's all different parts on each one. Yeah, it's so complex. I mean, for many music that I've seen the young Asian communities listen to, hip hop and a lot of the digital DJ style music, I've not seen many of them pick up. And same with all cultures, really. Hip hop and a lot of dance music is the sound, I think, of where they're going out to. So I've not really seen a lot of the Asian community young age community picking up instruments. At that tabla workshop, the teacher was older. A lot of people there were older as well, and it was more Western students. At the same time, though, I'm sure there are some really good players, and it's just it's us connecting as one big community, because obviously alcohol as well, a lot of Muslim communities don't drink, so, well, they don't, and none
Yeah.
do, so maybe that's a part of a stumbling block. And then just maybe having an event that shapes it, where you can curate, where you have, say it's a world music night, and you're curating different parts of the world coming and playing, so different bands from different cultures coming and playing under one night. You don't really see that an awful lot in Preston. I think a regular night like that would work. A world music evening, or at least that has different genres playing regularly, would be good. Like the in maybe different venues. I'm not sure. My favourite venue is the Continental. It is active. Maybe opening up 53 Degrees might help. You know, because I know a part of the reason why they don't is because it's so expensive to hire. And maybe if you were to like lower that price, because surely it would be benefit them to make some money. You know, so maybe opening up some of the more professional spaces, having a regular night at somewhere like the Continental that has different cultures play each time. And what else do I think? One project I want to pursue is to bring drum workshops into primary schools in Preston, because obviously they can't. Most primary schools don't have any music on the curriculum, and from my experience, I know there was not an instrument in sight except an out-of-tune piano at my old primary school. So my project is to run workshops through various primary schools next spring, and then have them perform at Lancashire Encounter, and in front of the parents at big school assemblies at the end of the year. And I'm looking at like Arts Council funding and stuff, because I know Arts Council came to Preston a few months ago, saying, look, we want to fund some projects here because there's not a lot going on here. So help from a place like Arts Council would be massive, and I know I've friends of mine that are people like Dave Sher and Tom Metcalf that are pursuing growing their own sound, and also as teachers. Arts Council, PRS, music funding, stuff like that would really help them, and yeah, and get them performing more regularly around the Northwest. I think promoters, as like we were saying before, like people who are maybe not the musician or the artist, people that can help sell tickets and then can help bring spotlight, and that have the they have the experience and intelligence to be able to understand how to get people to come to an event. I know like UCLan and stuff, they put a lot of events on, and sometimes do really well, and sometimes don't get as many people through. So more benefit. Yeah, so when help putting on an event and help getting people through the door as well is like, I think, the biggest thing. And then YouTube, maybe a really good YouTube channel that so you see it a lot in hip hop, don't you, with SBTV and these sort of channels have really supported rappers coming up. Maybe like, because you don't really see an Old Grey Whistle Test on television, so maybe something like an Old Grey Whistle Test that's online based that could really, that could help bring an audience, and it is Preston based, or Lancashire based, and maybe once a month you have or once a week you have a new band. They perform 2 or 3 songs. You have a multi-camera filming, and then you interview them at the end. Maybe something like that would really, cause the facilities are there. UCLan's got theatres and professional they've got all the kit to be able to do it. So maybe something like that might really benefit the town. You could have Permeate YouTube music showcase every month, and then using that to promote all the events that are going on locally. Is that alright? Yeah.
Really good.
Alright, good.
Thank you for your time.
Chris. My pleasure.